G'day, doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. It's the live review. Going to talk about all the latest news with Lachlan Galvin. There's a heap to talk about. There's articles coming out left, right, and centre. Was hoping to do the review a bit earlier, so we'll do it today. We'll talk about what happened on Thursday, which might not be on. A lot of people probably don't want to go back there, but we will, because I think it's important to have a look and have a chat about it. We'll talk about Lachlan Galvin. Everyone's going to be putting out who's going to be going where. You know, there was people saying that Burton's moving to fullback. That's one I'm going to rule out, but I could be bloody wrong. You know what I mean? We'll talk about all that. Talk about Reed Mahoney. Plus, we'll give big shout out to Joash Papali and Pele, who's become a star on social media after his presenting his loved son with the jersey and all of his children in the room. But anyway, g'day to everyone who's joining and coming to say hello. G'day, Adam. How you going, mate? You're really proud of all our boys. I am too, my brother. Good afternoon, champion. Thank you, Timmy. Hello, Elaine. Welcome. It's taken me a little bit of time to get going today. And obviously, there's a big game on coming up. The Warriors versus the Raiders. Warriors missing a couple of big boys, but I'm sure their replacements are going to want to make a real impression, which is what we're seeing this weekend. Very much seeing that across most of the games, with every game being an upset so far. G'day, Reg. How you going? And thanks to everyone who's joining. We'll wait a little bit longer before we start talking about potential things that may or may not happen. I want to talk about Reed Mahoney a little bit as well. We've got a lot of... look, I'm pretty disgusted in some of the journalists. I'm a little bit disappointed in some of the fans as well, but that's all right. People can enjoy footy how they want, and I can be disappointed with people, just like they can be disappointed with me. But, you know, we have one loss. There's talk of Galvin, you know, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know, just talking past what people have done, you know. Journalists doing the same things, dickheads like David Riccio coming out on the fucking radio and saying that if Isaiah Katoa played for the Bulldogs on Thursday night, the Bulldogs would have won 44-8. So he was basically saying the difference between Toby Sexton and Isaiah Katoa right now in that game was 36 points. Absolute dickhead to say that. And then trying to jump on the Galvin train. You know, Galvin's coming to the Bulldogs. Danny Wheeler's reported. I can't say his name properly, so I just say Wheedler. If he's reported it, it's bloody happening. And we're going to love him like we love every other Bulldog in our system. And I don't buy into... I never bought into any of the stuff around him being a dickhead or anything like that. I always said that, you know, it's a business. People do what they want to do. They have ideals. It's up to them how they go about things. And I felt the whole West Tigers offering him $1 million was all a big smokescreen anyway. I said that's at the time. They don't even have the money available to offer that, right? They've got so many people on big money. And I just believe they were doing it because they knew they weren't going to get him. And they were trying to galvanise their club and their side, knowing he was going to be gone. Anyway, let's get to what people are saying so far. G'day, Sayed. Personally, I'm happy with the signing of Galvin. I see Burton moving centre and Sherry to wing and Montoya dropping. Galvin and Sexton halves. What's your opinion? I don't see any of that yet. I just see the club are going to work out how it's going to best fit. He may not start in our side. You know, look, Gus said last year that Galvin, when talking about the Rookie of the Year, he said he probably... If he was at Bulldogs last year, he wouldn't have played first. If he was at Penrith or Melbourne or the Roosters, he wouldn't have played first grade last year. But he was very impressed with the way he handled it. He couldn't believe how tall he was. He couldn't believe how he's sort of like still like a kid. He couldn't imagine how that kid in front of him was then on the field playing NRL first grade. Well, we will see. We will see what happens with Lachlan Galvin, and we'll look at some potential lists. I deliberately didn't write one down yet because I wanted to see what people had to say. But look, there's I've made some comments on social media around Reed Mahoney, who I think's one of the biggest influences in helping turn our club around. But he won't be here, right? So there's one player out of the spine. Our spine is still only worth just over $2 million with the players playing for it. We have a system which takes us so far. We don't need a dominant halfback the way we're playing. But to be a 10-year dominant team or longer, or even a 5-year dominant team, you need a halfback. The ideal will be to have a halfback which runs our team and touches the ball 80, 90 times a match. That'll be the thing. And Galvin has sort of been doing that. The Tigers gave him practice at that. He's touching it 3 and 4 and 5 times a set sometimes. Is he the halfback? Don't know. It's funny, people say Matt Burton's not a halfback. Well, in our system, he's still the main man. The last 2 games especially, part of the review, Matt Burton couldn't have done any more with his boot. I think he forced between 8 and 9 errors with his boot alone in 2 matches. So that game against the Dolphins, we had the plays set up to dominate, and the turning of them around, we were doing that well. Mahoney had a nice kick. Burton had plenty. We just couldn't consolidate, and that's pretty much the tale of the story, the 16 errors and unable to maintain that momentum. And that part where we sort of got it cranking and they denied our try, that really took the wind out of the sails. And on the blowout, the coaches are going to make excuses. People don't like seeing that score. I see those things happen and I'll be like, and in that game, I knew we weren't going to win game 3. And everyone got ahead of themselves. Because they see the scoreline and they think it's an absolute domination. It was just we maintained possession, then they got to play a sin bin and they fell apart under fatigue. Fatigue destroys teams, and that's why we beat most sides, because we are fitter and more mobile than most teams. Other teams have caught wind of it, and you can see by their lineups they're choosing one less big man in their side, and if they have that big man, extra big man, they need to play a perfect half or a perfect 60 minutes to win the match. So I think looking at the way it goes, especially in day games, you'll notice teams that are more mobile, like the Bulldogs, are winning those games every time, have a massive advantage. But I'm going a bit all over the place, so let's go to you guys. The news of Galvin, just wanted to see who you think the club may let go. I already feel Hutchison isn't being re-signed and Taff. Yeah, well, look, I don't want to speak over it, but Hutchison, Taff, people who aren't signed yet, they're not with the club. Historically, that's what's happened. You'll find that it's going to be people that they upgrade from juniors. There'll be a heap of those. There may be room for another big signing for the following year. I believe. I still think the club feels skinny in its fullback, which you would sort of go, well, Taff would be a good backup for that. But I think they actually want someone, that can really affect the scoreboard in NRL from that position. But can also do the work like a Connor Tracy, can also get across the ground, be there to try and stop tries and make 200 metres and put us into good field position. Like the club, I know Gus Gould looks at the 1 and the 7 as the two most important parts to your structure in order to win and dominate, to influence the scoreboard. We sort of have we've got enough stars in our side at the moment. Like, I would say we've got 6 or 7 players capable of playing State of Origin, which is, you basically need that if you're going to win a comp or compete for one. But we will look. There's Daniel Saluka for feeder. There's Toby Sexton. There's Drew Hutchison, Curtis Moran. There's about 5 or 6. And I would say that there's a chance we might keep one out of all those players. Please don't forget to hit that like button, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks, Adam. Much appreciated. We have Hayward, who I feel has been a shining light in the absence of Burton early in the season. Do you feel long-term Hayward will replace Mahoney at hooker? Hayward will replace Mahoney at hooker, in my dead set opinion. And I can see that they've brought Oscar Bryant. I forget the other fella's name, who's pretty good as well, who looks the part. There's Otakulo. There's Ruben Moyle, who's right there. And there's also a bunch of halves in our halves academy, which will need to take other pathways to be first graders. That'll be skilled and be able to kick and be able to pass off the deck and, sum things up from dummy half and where they are. And some that'll go to other clubs and become first graders in that position as well. And who knows, even better. That's what we're trying to have. The club, to get to the position our club, I know we're on top of the ladder, right? But to be consistently on top of the ladder, our club wants to be in a scenario where they have so many options to choose from that they could make mistakes and pick the wrong ones. You know what I mean? But you've got to be in that situation in the first place, and sometimes they get it wrong. But just think about it. When all the people who are really doubting this signing and really worried about everything, remember what people said, and they're still saying, in a way. We need a big man. We need a proper 7. We need a proper 1. Why did you buy all these utilities? Why did you buy another second rower? Why did you buy another hooker? Why did you buy another centre? Why did you buy that idiot? He does nothing. He's slow. Not naming names, but this is the stuff that was being said about us last year. Oh, you got Stephen Crichton and a bunch of goonies. Well, a lot of those players have all played a really important role in getting our team into a position where our fans are going nuts in the streets of Belmore again. You need to trust. And the thing I say is, look, I made some comments when we started getting some wins under Mick Potter years ago. 2022. We had Avarillo there playing well at fullback when they finally put him there, which we're all happy about. I'm like, give the job to Mick Potter. Why are we going to go to a rookie in Serraldo? And I'm like, we've got Avarillo. We don't need Crichton. And in 2022, Crichton had those moments of special moments in games, from the time he debuted to his first touch to the intercept in the grand final in 2021. Special things happen around this guy, but he sort of went in and out of games. He wasn't the big hard workhorse. Then they had him playing fullback, and he actually did the work. But the sort of finesse and the other stuff, he got a couple of try assists and whatever else, but it was more for him about, doing his carries out of his own end, trying to do sort of mimic what was happening with Dylan Edwards. And then he was signed, and I'm like, But the 2023 season, he changed my mind completely with his defence in that State of Origin game that he come in and played really well in a losing series. I looked at Serraldo and saw the way that we smashed Melbourne and players that had come into our team that we just fell in love with. And it's just been a ride since then. I know we continue to have those issues in 23, but As we can see, he stuck to his guns, and the players that couldn't adapt to that scenario fell away, and the players that did adapt to it are still there. And it's taken us a long way. And we still have a big shot at this competition. Don't you worry about that. As far as it derailing, if players in our club, understandably, human emotion comes into things, right? With our fans, with our players, with our coaches, with corporate sponsors, with everyone, with the coaches themselves, I'm sure even with Gus. But at the end of the day, right, the club wants a club where if a player comes in on more money than someone who's there, the player who's there says, all right, I accept the challenge. And just works their ass off, worries about their own game, worries about adding value to the team. Real good thing Pele Papali said in his speech to Joash. When you go out there today, son, just add value to your teammates. Really good, and that's a great message to give kids from a young age all the way up. Add value. Help that team be its best it can be by you being the best you can be. I've seen our club and these players, with all these ones coming through to our team over the last couple of years, I've seen these kids step up. You've all seen it in front of your very eyes. And they've all pretty much all earned themselves extensions. You will find though that some of these players that have had player managers that have got a little bit trigger happy, gone in with to try and negotiate. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems to play out that way, that those players don't end up staying. So I think it's a case where you go out in there and do your best, show you're a Bulldog, audition for your future every time with everything you do every single day. And if the club wants you to be with that club, they're going to pick you. If not, hopefully they help you get signed somewhere else and your dream carries on in another club. And look at what we just saw on the weekend. There's 4 Bulldogs players that are in our top 30 last year and the year before, or last year. Had a great victory over the Manly Sea Eagles, the Parramatta Eels, our next team that we play. And I'm telling you, they're going to be tough. Hopefully this big 18-day break for the Bulldogs, and hopefully they get there and they galvanise and are ready to put on the biggest show that they've put on all year for that Parramatta Eels side, and let those guys that left the club know why they're at another club. Adam, I know that Galvin will thrive under Cam. That's it. May not work out. G'day, Bearded Tech. Interesting times ahead. Bloody 100%, mate. Going forward, the current halves we are developing, could Galvin be developed as a ball-playing lock? Well, they've all said that, Timmy. They've all said that. He's 6'2", so he's like the average height of a lot of the players we bring into our sort of, that's Harry Hayes' height, Satili Tupanua. All these players about 6'1", 6'2". Going through some of his games, I was doing that before. He can throw a really good ball, which I watch people say that he can't do that. I think consistently, though, if he's playing in a 7 role, it would be a bit of a concern if he goes out there and he's playing his natural game, because he will throw passes which won't hit their mark. There'll be errors that will cost us possession. Right now, I'm talking about as a first grader. But his ability to create numbers and having players run the right lines and go with him is something, with those short balls as well, is something to behold. He can make breaks. He can break the line. And he can throw a ball in the line as well. Like, His offloading is great as well. Does that mean he goes to 6? I don't believe so. I don't think they're going to take Matt Burton out of 6. Matt Burton's had a frustrating season, right? He was going great round 1 and 2, got injured, come back, made a heap of errors, but we won easy anyway. Since then, has just got better and better, and his kicking game the last 2 games has been sensational. Absolutely sensational. Hayward's done his role, come on, gone to first receiver, both sides, played that lock role really well. When we had Burton there, he's done that. When we've had Salmon and Mann there, he's gone back and they started taking Mahoney off, which they've never done. Started giving Mahoney a break after 55 minutes, 60 minutes. And Hayward's come on and done a great job from hooker. I believe he will be the hooker sooner rather than later. And there was a Fox article out today, which we'll talk about in regards to Reed Mahoney and the Bulldogs. I think there's a lot of assumption in that. Again, Buzz basically wrote that story at the start of 2024, to be honest. And they've been waiting to, he's talked about it, but every time they're waiting to bring that through. And if they've watched The Room, they would know that there is a transition to Bailey Hayward. It really appears that way. Critter fullback, Burton at centre, my guess. Look, we will talk about Critter at fullback, and we'll talk about the Gus influence on teams that he's been at in the way that they coach, like Ivan Cleary, Cameron Soriano, even Robinson to a degree. Galvin is more likely a 6 because he's more of that off the cuff, take it to the line, do something different. Whereas the 7, it's control the footy, run the team, get us into position, do all the little stuff, and then be on hand to create everything that needs creating. Timmy, you have previously said that Critter will eventually play fullback. Would you have Tia, Woods, Burton, O'Neill, or how far down the pecking order is Joey O'Neill? I don't know. I can't claim to know. It's very much up in the air, mate. Right now, any one of those players could come in, I think, and play a role and do a job. But whether they come in and be a dominant 7, any of them at this point, I'm not sure. I know that's what they train and practice for. We're seeing players like O'Neill run the ball a lot more. We saw Sexton run the ball a lot more to start the season. He got hammered a few times. He coughed up possession. He nearly broke the line numerous times. Didn't quite do it. But I love what he was doing. The actions were right. Execution, not always there. But he's been pummeled. The thing for me in our system at the moment is the defense of the halfback is where it all starts from. And Toby's got his position off that defense and the fact he can do the things he's got to do. On Friday night or Thursday night, he didn't get as many touches as one would have liked. But the fact of the matter is, it's a game where you're passing the ball a little bit less, right? Because of the way the rain was just teeming down. The width and speed of pass was also a little bit hard sometimes. Once Reed made that mistake, which cost us a try before for half time, that sort of made him a bit gun shy with the way he was passing as well. He shouldn't have tried to rocket out a spin ball from the deck anyway in those conditions, but he had been doing it and doing it okay. But he stuffed that one up. It's just the margin for error is so much bigger in those scenarios, and I just felt that Burton was the man they had to give the ball to because he's the bigger running threat in that scenario. He was playing well, and his kicks were causing real problems for the opposition, which he'd done in the previous week as well, which is why we were able to win the game against the Roosters. So you're not going to take that out of your artillery. No way. Not yet. I don't believe Burton goes anywhere from the 6 at the moment. I'm more of the inclination that we'll see Hayward move to the 9 shortly, and a player like Galvin will spend some time in cup and will be given opportunities off the bench, and until they think he's ready to set the world on fire. I can't see that being against Parramatta round 1, but I don't make these decisions, nor would I want to. It's a real hard thing for anyone to get their head around, and I know everyone's looking to all these things, but that guy Chris Smith who come out and said that, all these Fox journalists are going to act like they're genius now. This is the first time that they've any of them have predicted that they reckon he'll go to the Bulldogs. A player will go to the Bulldogs, and they're actually been signed ever since Gus has been there and since 2020. Once Wheeler says it, pretty much it's been 100%. And Chamis sort of tinkers on the edges a little bit, but he gets it right, over 80% of the time. And he doesn't really come out and say this player is going to be at the Bulldogs unless he knows it's happening, sort of thing. So he's more conservative. He'll talk about, who's negotiating. And I don't think he would have got that directly from Isaac Moses himself. G'day, Francis. Trusting Gus, he knows what he's doing. Totally strategic. Yeah, well, many will say that he's been aiming for this for 2 seasons. And I don't believe that to be true. What I believe is, saying that he's pitching from afar. If that's the case, he must be pitching to every player in the Penrith side. He complements so many players in rugby league. I don't think he was pitching from afar at all. If Lachlan Galvin wanted to speak to Phil Gould, which he's done, he speaks to him. I have no doubt that Gus didn't get on there and call Galvin when he became available. I'd have no doubt that Isaac Moses made the first call and said, Lockie wants to talk to you about potentially coming to your club. That's what I believe, unless I'm told otherwise. That's how it seems to roll with the Dogs. We take a phone call. If they want to come to Canterbury, they come. I'm thinking of how this will affect our development in the lower grades. Like I've heard from Elaine earlier that CJ has been offered a 2-year extension to play SG ball. Yeah, he was already offered that. So, yeah, CJ is a fullback, centre, 5'8". I'm sure he could play anywhere they wanted him to play. And he would, take on the challenge and be a star. And I think he's playing tomorrow in the schoolboys. So if you can watch that, watch those schoolboy games. Yeah, look, SG ball, Harold Matts. There's going to be a few kids that make it to the NRL from that far down. Most of them won't. It's get behind them, support them, help them on their transition by supporting them. And, the club will decide whether they stay with us or if they try their hand other places. There's been some good kids doing some good stuff at other clubs that were in our system. You can't keep them all. As much as you look at this kid from a young age and get invested in it because you're like, oh, this kid's killing it there. The transition to first grade is very, very difficult. For some, it's very hard to go to Flegg level or to Ron Massey level or to New South Wales Cup level, let alone NRL level. But as we expand, it's important that our club locks up as much junior talent as it can. And this is what I said, when we're signing a really good second rower from St. George, who's a really great junior, we're trying to make sure we've got as many of the young juniors in our system as possible and giving them the opportunities. Because when expansion happens, they're all going to be it's those type of players which clubs are like Perth and that are going to have to buy because they're going to have to get value in their cap. They're going to have to pay overs for some big names or half big names to get them over there. And yeah, they're going to need to get some good quality juniors into their local leagues and stuff. So it's something we have to do. So whilst the Dragons, who have some really good talent from that SG ball winning side last year, while they're out signing Gutherson and Cook, we're signing one of their best juniors. But, they've got some of our best as well. So there's a bit of payback there. They got a couple of ours. Mason Phillips is a really good hooker. And the other the little halfback is doing well for them and playing reserve grade. Doing a great job. It's an immediate release for Galvin, and he will join the Doggies this week. That's what it's looking like, brother. Elaine's telling me CJ has the potential to play fullback. I feel Cam wants a fullback the same old as Tedesco or Dylan Edwards. Yes, so that's why I've got to talk about it, mate. You got a lot of questions coming, my friend, which I love. But I will talk about, I'm not going to focus on these youngsters, mate, going back that far at the moment. We've got to talk about probably the ones in flagging up at the moment. And we talk about why Burton isn't a sort of player that would go to fullback in a Phil Gould style run team. But Critter is one that could be an exception for that. He's the long strider that could move into that role at some point. But still, I don't know if that would be their ultimate preference moving forward. Paid $165,000 for Galvin, immediate release from the Tigers. Yeah, that's the price they sent, brother. G'day, Paulie. I wasn't against Galvin coming, but now he's coming. I'm getting right behind him. That's what we've got to do. You're a Bulldog, you're a bloody Bulldog. I reckon you got to let him earn his spot, though. Can't just drop him in the first grade. Yeah, well, I'll trust them to do what they believe they've got to do. If they want to fast track him, if Gus thinks he's there and Serraldo and everyone's happy with him, with what he's doing at training and how he goes about his business, he'll and if he's ready, they'll put him there. All this stuff that we talk, all these cliches, I've said it hundreds of times too. They mean nothing. If they believe the player's ready, the player's ready. If they believe that they need to go in and out, some players they're happy to throw them into the fire, happy to play them when there's when the team's depleted. Others they're like, no, we've got to bring this guy in gradually when we've got a pretty strong squad out there, and let them play their part minute by minute. There's different, there's different sort of methods for the individual. It's look, I've been watching our teams in our juniors, and our results aren't as good this year, right? They've sort of consolidated a lot of the players they had. Brought a couple in from other places, like Cooper Toy from the Roosters and some others. And he scored a good try on the wing today in New South Wales Cup. We lost Flegg and Cup in winning positions for both of them. High scoring affairs. And that's been a bit of a trend where we're falling away in the end of games, but that's because they're really working with the individuals on trying to find out who's going to take that next step, who gets that next position in the pecking order that establishes itself at the start of the season, then resets after 10 or 11 rounds. And then they've sort of got to define who's going to, play in those games in the other, who's going to be the main squad for Flegg moving towards the end of the season. Depending on results, if they fall away and they can't make finals, then they change things again. There's all these plans that they have going, but the major common denominator from what I see and what I've heard is that the individuals are learning and following KPIs and targets in their own games and their own performances based on getting them to play NRL. So it's for them to help our club. They can get players to go out there and play a certain role to help a team win, which is great. But a lot of them have a huge focus on what they've got to do to add a lot of value to their own game so that they can add value to teams and clubs as NRL players. And for some clubs that click really well and have a great season, some just a couple of players in that side inspire as well. You look at the flag side, and this gives me a lot of confidence about he's going all right. Does he look like the Messiah right now? Oh, he's very skillful. He's a great runner. He's fast. If he sees an opportunity, he goes for it. A lot of the time, he's getting to work. Then there's other things you can see that he's just doing things in his game, But when he seems to play with that flag side, they do lift. They definitely do lift. And I think Alex Conte has a big effect on that team as well. So, yeah, Galvin's a 6. He could play centre. He's tall enough. He could play lots of positions. But I think it's going to be about his development and how he's going to help our club be strong by him being the best he can be every time he goes out there. You develop these individuals so that they can be the best that they can be. Every day is an audition. Every opportunity is an audition for their future. But Gus has come out and said that he thinks this guy will be the richest. By the end of his career, he would have made more money than any other NRL player. Like, that's a pretty big bloody call. And if Gus believes that, why would anyone... We just go, okay, wherever he goes, put him there, get excited. It's not going to work out. There'll be heaps of doubters. There'll be heaps of people who'll be coming out and go, if we lose a few games, you can imagine what's going to be said. Oh, the players didn't want him to come. Oh, and I even felt that when it was first announced. By Richardson going out there and saying all this stuff, he was galvanising his own club and also making it, really scary for fans of opposition clubs for him to come to their club. A lot of fans are saying, I don't want him. That's what a lot of people were saying. I reckon Burton a fullback, Sexton stays 7 for the rest of the year, and Critter stays put for now. The next year is a clean slate. Nah. Burton's not a fullback, never played there, in my opinion. Sorry, we're having some real troubles at the moment with the connection, which is annoying. Yeah, I don't see Burton as a fullback. Chris Smith come out, Paulie, and said Burton was going to fullback. Right? A conservative commentator on Sky Sports. If it happens, I just don't see it. Why would you take Burton out, who's been single-handedly responsible for giving us an opportunity to win the last 2 games? Why would you move him? It doesn't make sense. And this is what so we'll talk about this now. Fullbacks in Ivan Cleary clubs. Ivan Cleary's completely influenced by Gus Gould's coaching methods. He's come out and said it numerous times. Gus knows that he's influenced me a lot by the way my team plays. Tedesco, Dylan Edwards. They went and got Blake Taff. They got Connor Tracy. It's that type of player. I can't see Matt Burton getting across from the edge of the field to cut. When Tracy got caught up on the edge making a try-saving tackle, then had to run back because they put the ball in the in goal under the post, and he was the one. Sexton missed the kick. Then Tracy got back there. Matt Burton doesn't get there in any circumstance. He's not that type of player. That's the type of fullback they need in our system. Now, Critter would struggle to get there, but Critter's a bit different. You look at players like Tom Trbojevic, Critter, and even Latrell Mitchell to an extent, are all great centres. Matt Burton, a really strong centre. Fullback is probably because they've got that level in their game. And look, for me to dismiss Matt Burton as not having the same level as Trbojevic and Critter and players like that, he's not far off if he's not there already. But the point I'm making is that all of his best assets in the way he kicks the football and that are all nullified at fullback. It just doesn't make sense. I can't see him sweeping around the back in the same way. I think he's more of a threat playing in the 5/8 role, and I do believe he can manage. He can, this halfback role they talk about at the Bulldogs is pretty much a role. You're playing. We haven't really had a really strong halfback at our club since Hodgkinson, and even he was playing behind James Graham. James Graham was touching the ball first. It's there's only a few dominant halfbacks in our game, capable. And so if you don't have that dominant halfback, or you're developing that dominant halfback, you've got to play a system where that half just does its thing. Isaiah Katoa last year, there was 25 minutes in games where he didn't do anything. Hardly did a thing with the ball. And then he'd come and inject himself, do some really good stuff, straighten up the attack. They've developed this kid knowing he was going to be a future star. Now he's just doing more and more and more. Now, I think that's what they've sort of talked to Toby about, and I think that's where Toby wants to be. I'm not sure if he gets there. I'm not going to say he won't, though, because I think he's got the potential. He's got the defence right. He's got the skills in his kit bag. But can he take it to the line and straighten up the attack enough, which creates space, because they're scared if he runs, he's going to break through. And that's what the great halfbacks have in their kit bag. Mitchell Moses makes breaks. He can run a short side and strip people of numbers, which means he can play a 6 role really well if he needs to. If you rush up on him, he makes you look silly with his footwork. And he's got speed as well. Nathan Cleary, size, speed, execution. They can all defend. They can all defend really well as well. It's to start talking about Burton a fullback. If it happens, I'll eat humble pie. I'm happy for him to, whatever they do, I fully support it. I just can't see that happening. I really can't. Once Galvin comes to the first grade, which won't take long. JD. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It'll give us a lot of relief when we actually see what the plan is and how it works. It's also why I do want to talk about the game on the weekend, because all the lead up to where people are going to play. I said there'd be a great chance that Hughes would start if he was declared fit. I said there was a chance that Curran could go onto that edge. I thought Hit Boy would start over Harry Hayes, but Harry being higher in the pecking order, he started, which I also mentioned. And the fact they had Blake Taft defend at 5'8" and Matt Burton defend at centre, I thought was the best way they could have done it. Move Cherry to the right, which he's just as happy with. He played on Farnworth, which was great. And, It's hard for a player who's been playing fullback like Taff to go out there and defend in the line without doing it week in, week out. If we move Lachlan Galvin into that scenario, if he goes to 7, to say Sexton's dropped, or if he goes to 5'8", how good is our defence going to be? We'll have to see, but it'll take time. There'll definitely be. Look, he defends. He rushes up. He meets them on the contact. He's doing all that. You're watching him, but he's still quite young, and he still hasn't filled out yet. He's got probably between 90 and 92 kilos. They reckon he'll probably get to 95 to 100 over the next couple of years, I would say. He'll be a pretty big boy. Yeah, I just reckon it wouldn't be fair to slot him straight into the halves straight away. No. Well, fair's not... Paulie, fair's got nothing to do with it. It's probably not fair on him. But if they're confident he's going to do that job and he gives them every reason to pick him there, they'll pick him there. It's going to be their choice. They'll know what's going on. I'll give you how I think it will go, but I'm still thinking about that as we sort of speak. And it's sort of hard to go, you come out and say something, go, oh, that could work. And then you think about it and go, But it does mean you sacrifice someone from your squad. Who is it? Our back 7 has been pretty much the same all year. Tracy, Carraz, Cherry, Crichton, Montoya, Burton, Sexton. One of them players leaves. Wilson comes in. Critter or Carraz, Carraz goes down, Wilson comes in. If Montoya goes down, Wilson's going to come in. If Critter leaves, Carraz will move to centre, Wilson will come in. You lose 2 of them, though. They brought Blake Taff in. Probably knowing he's got to, he's earned the right. They probably thought, he can defend in that line. His defence has improved. Missed 5 tackles on the weekend, which wasn't good. But I expected that. I thought he would have missed a lot more, to be honest, if he played centre, one more out. I felt he tried hard, did the best he could under the circumstance. Let him play with Mitch Woods for a couple of weeks. Well, honestly, if you probably go, that's where we're going to go. You got Drew out there who they have it playing in halfback, and you'll find that Drew Hutchison may make way for these kids. Cassius Tia dropped back to Jersey Flag today, and when that happened this morning, before this news came out, I was like, Galvin's with us. I just knew just then. I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but it clicked over in my mind. That's what happened. That's how I thought about it. G'day, Nobu. Welcome. Nice picture, brother. Much better than mine, I can tell you. Imagine a shitstorm from rival fans if Galvin wins a premiership in the next few years at the Dogs. Well, that's it, mate. 100%. We just got to get behind them. And look, I've got Joash Papali on here, who many were very disappointed to left our club. He got out there and did a great job in his debut. Samrani, playing centre, playing on an edge, doing well. Jordan Samrani was one of the best young talents coming through, and a real big body, good step, kept breaking his knee. Dogs let him go. They give him a go on the edge a couple of times in second row. Parramatta starting to have basically let a lot of their big blokes go, their big names go, all of their experience, and they've got a few Bulldogs juniors out of a good system, obviously. Talent, skill, speed, hunger, want to do well. Fox was, a bonus for them. But they're picking a more mobile pack, and they've allowed those players to develop in these positions. Bring back Mitchell Moses. You've already got Dylan Brown there who wants to leave on a good note. And look, they're going to be a tough team to deal with, I think, for the rest of the season, if they keep their halfback. playing with width, playing with speed, and players are getting their hands dirty to get things done. And they're willing to grind. They learn a lot of lessons from playing us. We were happy to let them grind. We were happy to let them dominate field position. And we took it. The game went the whole way, won it by 8 points. I think they're a better side than most people give them credit for. And they've picked up players like Joash Papali, Jordan Samrani, Gideon Katonga, have come out of our system. We've got to trust our system. And it's going to produce players like Joash Papali, who our club has said we're going to pursue with with Connor Tracy. And we're going to keep bringing some more young fellas through. But I still think the club is potentially on the outlook for a fullback that's an absolute superstar right now. And I don't see Burton being that fullback. I just don't. I think they have to develop him into a 7. Well, they might potentially, Look, players are going to outplay their value, and I think the first one you're going to see is Reed Mahoney. He's on 600 at the Dogs. I think he could earn more than that at any club. But I think our club, in that type of system, it looks at hookers and goes, yeah, once they're 600-700 grand, once they've taken a lot of punishment, we have to develop underneath them, and they use that spine position for the number 9 as a position where they try and get value out of it. Like Mitch Kenny's not on more money than Reed Mahoney. They let Appy Coruscant go. One of the best hookers in the game, one of the most creative hookers in the game. He's won premierships at multiple clubs. Won a premiership on his debut. I'm pretty sure it was. So he's Harry Grant's probably an outlier. He's on huge money. Reece Robson's got a good payday from the Roosters. They paid big money for Brandon Smith. But outside of that, Cook was costing Rabbits too much money. They don't want to pay huge money for hookers. JMK earned 700 grand at the Dolphins. I think the club would rather get someone from within who's developing, showing can kick, they can play both sides of the field, they can defend, more importantly, they can throw balls, they're prepared for the role, they've had a good mentor. Sorry for the continued dropouts. You see what happened with Hughes and Munster in Melbourne? They were both running ball backs, and now Hughes has become an elite 7. Well, there you go. Cooper Cronk, centre, fullback, come an elite 7. All this stuff, players aren't a 7. Or they aren't a 6, or they aren't this and they aren't that. From what I see, fullbacks in the mould of all the clubs that have won premierships in recent years have all had fullbacks that are not tall, big striding players. They're players that can get around the park, can cover the stop 40-20s, can get to the ball on the full, have energy for 80 minutes, can ball play a little bit. If they're not the best at that, they develop it and get better at it. You look at Dylan Edwards. Still not the smoothest ball player, but he can bloody do it now. That's currently the best fit for most teams, is to have a fullback like that. But a halfback, it's sort of moving towards bigger bodies, isn't it? And runners. Really tough runners of the footy. Critter isn't a fullback, in my opinion. Why would you change his position of fullback when he's probably the best centre going today? Yeah, I think it depends on what's best for the team. It's what's best for the team. And he's the only long striding fullback in, the only long striding player in our side that I think they would consider there. It's got to do with the money he's on as well. He's going to be over $1 million soon. Our cap is set up to be a disciplined cap. And when they actually find the players they want in all the spine positions, they get paid according to that, which is why, you look at a player like Kickow who's on 800,000 or just under. Jacob Preston's going to take that mantle in a year. Kickow, he's one that will outplay his value in that role. Now, do they bring him into the middle? Do they extend him for a year and then see what happens with PNG? Thinking that I believe there'll be a lot of Fijian pathway going to that side. I really do. And we know how passionate Kickow is about that. But does he want to live over there? Who I don't know. I have no idea. Just me speculating and having a think. But the way the system works, you've got your player who's your senior in that role. You've got two positions in the second row. You have your senior, and then you have your next tier. We have a lot of players which, we've got that are second rowers, but they're now playing middle. So the players that play on the edge, we want to be our most premium, hard-working, yet dangerous players that we have in our side. And right now, that is Viliami Kikau and Jacob Preston. Jacob eventually takes that role. We hopefully develop some beast that comes through like a Jacob Preston to take over the second part, knowing we've got all these other players there that can do it, like Satili Tupanua, who's here for 4 years on 650 grand. He's part of our long-term future at the moment. We know that players like Harry Hayes are going to continually earn themselves spots with what they've shown us in our top 30. We've seen what Lipo Hopoi has brought from last year to this year. Longer minutes, some footwork at the line, and he brought in an offload against the Dolphins, which in my opinion could have really ended up in some points for us. It didn't. But we've seen that progression in these guys. He comes into the top 30 next year. Leo Thompson's coming to the club next year. Where do you fit him in? Today Sam Hughes played New South Wales Cup after playing on Thursday for 20 minutes or almost 20 minutes. They wanted him to play 20 in those conditions. Probably, not winning the possession battle over that time. He was taken off. Did his best. Got some more minutes into him today. Had a couple of stints. Started, come on again in the second half. Have to see how many minutes he actually played. But that's because he's going to be in our side against Parramatta. Do we, the other player to come into our team against Para will just be Critter and Carraz. Sorry, not Carraz, Critter and Max King. Now, that's if they don't get injured in Origin. And after that game, the next Origin teams will be announced for the following week. Be stupid to put the next centre in at fullback, the best centre in at fullback. Even the word of putting Burton there is stupid. Hey, Matty. Look, a lot of people said, and I was one to say it, that everyone was saying, well, not everyone, but there was a lot of people saying he was going to come to us as a fullback. And after watching him play his best season in 2023, I was like, he's got to play centre. We'll be stronger with him at centre. Hopefully we keep an Averillo and he plays fullback. Averillo left. They got Connor Tracy and Blake Taff. And I'm like, well, to me, those guys have got to play fullback. They started with Taff. Critter was in the centres. It depends how well you defend out there. It also depends. He's the best centre in the game. We've conceded a hell of a lot more tries on his side. I'm not saying anything that because he is, in my opinion, the best defensive centre in the way he tackles, the way he reads it, the way the choices he makes are phenomenal. And we saw what he did against the Raiders in 2 games last year, this year, and some of the runs that he's had. But what I'm saying is, if it's going to benefit the side, and they believe that it's not going to weaken us in the centres, because the one is a much more important role. The way our system works, if our middle does their job and our edges push out properly and everyone's trustworthy in their defensive one-on-one, the centres and the wingers don't really have a very tough time of it. And that's how it's been for us this season and a lot of last. If Critter played centre in 2023, we still would have copped a shellackings in games. I have no doubt. I think he might have got us a couple of more wins with his influence, for sure. But I still think we would have smashed in games because we didn't have the forwards with the ability to restrict the meters of the opposition the way that they do with the system that they had perfected. And that is why, if they've got people that they believe can defend there, I can't see Burton going there. I don't really want to see Critter go to fullback, but I can see that happening. Our club, I just don't see a system where they want to have a player who's on over $1 million playing centre. But if he can roam around a bit, influence, do what he's doing as a captain, well, he's earned that much and they make allowances for it. But if we think that we can go and win a heap of premierships with a $2 million spine, well, I don't think that's what the club believes. It'd be lovely and nice. You need a fullback who's dynamic. You need a really great halfback. And you need, if you've got talent in all those other areas like hooker and lock and 5'8", especially like we do, you're going to go a long way. So they're thinking about the future. They've got the kids coming through. They've got the competition there for spots. And anyone, while it can be emotional, if they sit there and go, oh, I better look for another club, they just signed Lachlan Galvin. Well, that's not what the attitude the club wants. It's understandable. It's human. They want someone who goes, bring it on. I'm going to help Galvin. I'm going to help myself. And we're going to win for this club. That's the attitude. That's the culture. When he comes, embrace him. Become his mate. Connect with him. That's what they're going to do. They're going to do that. And anyone who, if it puts them under pressure or derails them and they can't handle the pressure, they're not cut out for it yet. Not to say they won't be cut out for it later on. But maybe they're not Bulldogs. Maybe it's not for everyone. Burt will remain in halves. Galvin to bide his time in cup. Potential of that, mate. 2027, CJC. G'day, brother. Assuming you're a brother, not a sister. Woods at 7, Galvin 6, Hayward 9, Critter at 1. Could be, mate. Could be. Could be Pappenhausen. In 2027, he's off contract. And he said he wanted to come to Sydney last time. So, sure that hasn't changed too much. And he only signed a 1-year extension. It's following the systems in place and providing an opportunity for young players to grow and learn. That's it, mate. happy about it. I think we need to give Critter a go at fullback. People forget he was originally signed for the Bulldogs as the fullback. Well, that's what people believed. This is what I keep talking about the media. The media, people in the media say things. And once someone has said that, the next media person goes, there's word that he's coming through as a fullback. Right? Gus never said he was a fullback. Gus said he'll play whatever's best, wherever the coach thinks is best for the side. And he'll be happy to play there. And that's what he's done. I don't want to go on too much about it, but we've got to remember so much stuff gets looked on in the historical record as being actually historical fact when it's not. It's like Lomax saying he wanted to be a centre and left the Eels to be a centre, and he's playing on the wing and accepted that now. There's actually no quote of him saying that. And apparently he said that he never said it. We've just got to look, that was the rhetoric, and I 100% heard the same thing, but I don't know if it's true. They've never played him at fullback at the Dogs ever. And they actually were playing him at 5'8" in the preseason if we had an issue with Burton. And they moved him there against the Titans, and then we conceded 2 tries on our edge with Preston at centre. How the tables have turned, the Warriors are looking good, and Canberra are shooting themselves in the foot with poor discipline. Yeah, well, it's just this game. Like, Warriors started favourites for this game, but I would have had the Raiders as favourites. So, you know, the only one that I suspected would win, that I thought would win, I believe Para were going to, you know, give Manly a really good go, and they smashed him. And I actually thought Newcastle would, without Kale and Ponga, would play a more simplified match against a bunch of young Panthers and beat them in a grind. Katonga playing well for the Eels. Yeah, he is, and well done to him. It'll be a royal day against the Eels. We have King and the Eels have a fox. Let's go, doggies. G'day, Mick. First post on a live. Pretty happy with the news. G'day, Matty. Nice looking burger there, brother. And thank you for joining. Much appreciated, mate. G'day, and thank you for joining as well, my friend. Hey, bro, yeah, I don't know. As long as he does what he's told, like game-wise, looking at him at the Tigers, he just does whatever he wants. Sometimes it works, most times it doesn't. Look, there's a bit of Reece Walsh in that too, isn't there? You know they're great talents. And, look, at our club, you'll do as you're told. Gus believes he's one of the best teenager he's ever seen. And to get him at 700 grand in our system now was a bit of a surprise. I don't believe it's been some, you know, strategic thing that they'll try and make out that it's been by Gus all along. I truly believe Gus would have felt in 5 to 6 years if it didn't work out with the players in our spine, that we might be paying this guy some huge money to come and influence the scoreboard for us. And he'll only give that big money to people he thinks that can do that. Bankstown, born and bred 1974, buried a Bulldog. I'll take a premiership no matter how we go with Galvin. There you go. Watch the Raiders game live on my iPad on the bus to Anzac Cove. Gallipoli. Never felt more Aussie. Go the Mighty Dogs, lest we forget. Yeah, mate. Well, Anzac Day is a special day. I read out my grandfather's diary last year on Anzac Day on this podcast. So if you go have a look at that, you can listen to that if you haven't heard it already. It's was pretty emotional. And I also was making references to people saying it was too hard at training. When no, my grandfather and many other grandfathers and great-grandfathers went through, and grandmothers and great-grandmothers. Yes, he does have a close relationship with Luke Vella, as does many. And look, Luke Vella, won a comp with Jersey Flegg. Last year moved into the role where he's an assistant coach, and his job is to get the young guys transitioned into NRL players. And he's very well respected. And everything he says, they take a lot of that on board. So he's a really good influence on our club. So good. We've caught up with all of that. So I think we've talked enough about Galvin, although people want to think about how it's going to look. Look, I see a scenario where Hayward moves into 9 at some point, whether it's next year or towards some point of the season. And I'll probably see Galvin moving into that secondary, into that number 17 role. That's where I see it. With Kurt Mann on the bench when Salmon comes back. But until then, it might be a Kurt Mann 13. They move a player like Lockie Galvin into that 14 role, which I can see that as well. Get him in the middle, see how he handles it. Maybe they move him to another position. Someone suggested Montoya moves out of the squad and they move Cherry to the wing. Maybe. It could be a chance as well. I'm sure whatever happens, the players will just get down to business and work their butts off. But yeah, maybe they move him to 7. They might. I don't really think it's going to happen yet, but we will see. He came to the Dogs because the fan base will have his back. Nobody messing with Galvin anymore. Well, that's it. Look, there was a lot of our fans who said, we don't want him. It was quite disappointing, Young Winston, who does a good job promoting the Bulldogs, did a 2-minute rant. He's since changed his tune. And sort of in it, he was like, if we do it, he will go along with it. But he wanted everyone to know, I didn't want this. And as I said, I think as fans, we've got to learn by the amount of things we didn't want to happen that happened and have now put us into a situation where we've got a side that's winning games that they probably shouldn't, that's playing above itself and is in a really good position, especially the way the comp's gone, that it's ahead of the curve. Could be sitting in second spot after today if the Warriors have a big win or win by a few. I think they'd have to have a massive win. But we'll be equal on top of the Warriors if they win. The Raiders, and then there'll be like a 4-point gap to third spot is what it'll be. That's a good spot to be in. We don't play next week. And then we've got to wait another 8 days to play the Eels on the Monday. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if he'll play on that Monday. Obviously, we're going to be watching carefully to see what's happening. Be watching carefully to see the team they name that comes out against Parramatta. They've got a couple of weeks to do all this. It'll be interesting to see before June 30 if any of our players in our spine or players on the cusp of, that role move to other clubs before June 30. Yes. But let's talk about Reed Mahoney. Reed had some errors on the weekend. Most of those errors were obviously he didn't want to make them. He felt bad about them. There were mitigating circumstances in the way the weather was, and both teams were making errors, right? We ended up making 5 or 6 more in the end, compounded by the extra defence and only having 45% possession. Reed's had a few moments where he's been impatient, gone out of the game plan. But for the most part, he's done a pretty good job this season and been influential in our victories. There was, look, I think Bailey Hayward will transition to the role of hooker by the end of the season. I don't know how far away that is. Do I think the Bulldogs are really unhappy with Reed Mahoney performances on the field? I don't believe they would tell anyone that or leak that. I would think that they have their plan, and the plan starts 3 and 4 years ahead, and it comes back to where we are now and how we get there. And what's the journey and where do the chess pieces fall and what's plan B and C and D and E if this happens and this happens. There's a lot of planning around it. And sometimes the emotion of that for players, that's not really a consideration. And there are players that are emotional, and we've seen that. We saw Reed in his first game in a trial at Belmore looked a shadow of the player as a captain even. Looked like it got to him. There was a lot riding on it. He made a big decision to come to us from Para. Had some good games, got better and better. Had some tough games. I felt most of his season, nearly every win we've had, I felt that he's been a major part of it. And I felt he's busted his ass for us. But I think there's an end game with Reed Mahoney and the club strategy. And whether that's this my gut is that he will be leaving the club or not leaving the club right away, but I don't know. I just think there's something going on there. I could be wrong, but the last thing I want people to do is to start attacking Reed Mahoney publicly like a lot of people do. Blaming him. Why does there have to be a blame on a player when we lose? People blaming Montoya. People blaming Sexton. People blaming Mahoney. When the team defends the ruck and slows down the play, our edges get things sorted. They can all defend. When we're able to cut down time from the opposition, which is our game plan, teams really struggle with us and we outlast them. Against the Dolphins on the weekend, on Thursday, we were implementing all of that stuff, turning it back inside, wearing out their middles. But with the game the way it flowed and the mistakes we made trying to build momentum, that's what cost us the game. Made us more tired, made us unable to stop the roll on. We've been conceding points early in matches. But you have to look at all the players out of our team. Yes, we're bringing in players that can, come on off the bench and do their jobs, and we're moving other players to start and all this sort of stuff, but it does have an effect on your team's ability. The club's not making any excuses, but what we are doing is still winning the majority of those games. I was happy with the half against the Broncos, the second half. They had to be perfect to do that. The Raiders were pretty much perfect when we weren't. I felt against the Roosters we're a lot better in those first halves. Even though we were down. But then when we got our game on and we got the roll on happening, very hard to stop and forcing teams into errors. I've liked the amount of errors we've forced teams into in the last couple of weeks. But it has been wet and at night at a core. So, Para, 4 p.m. match at a core. I'm looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that. I think it's going to suit us a lot better. I'm sure they're going to feel suited by it as well, which is why I think it's going to be a really good game of rugby league. And I have no idea who the team's going to be. But I do know Max King will be there. Critter will be there if they're not injured. And Sam Hughes will be there if he doesn't get a reoccurrence of his injury. He might play again in New South Wales Cup this week, and they might even have DSF play as well. If they don't have a bye or anything and they play this week. Or sorry, like next weekend. Which I have to look at to get them ready. But I don't think DSF will be in the side if Sam Hughes is there and King are there. I think they'll go with that more mobile player, as you know. They'll have Harry Hayes there. They'll have Curran there. Curran will stay on the edge until the following week when Preston comes back. And Tupanua should be back as well the following week against the Rabbits. And then, so I think Hip Boy and Hayes will stay. And maybe they carry that extra young fella in, a Lachlan Galvin, in the number 17. Maybe. I think they will stagger it a little bit. Because I just see it being too soon to bring him straight in that scenario. Yeah, I can just see a lot going wrong. And I can see a lot of fallout. And a lot of media bullshit. I just think it wouldn't be protecting interests. But if they do make that choice, they've got to wear whatever the outcome is. And obviously it's be part of their plan to getting to where they want to be long term. G'day, Caven. As a loyal Bulldog supporter, I'm just saddened by losing a favourite player. That's it. We lose them all the time. I was sad in losing Jim Dimmick, Dean Pay, Jared McCracken, Jason Smith. They all left. Real sad. Sad when Langmack, Gillespie, Joe Thomas and others went to Wests. I was saddened by that. It happens. But the club moves on. And we move on with it. I know a lot of those people chose to leave. And who's to say, it's not always the club's intention to force players out either. Like right now, everyone wants to stay for the most part, and no one wants to go. I think, though, that there will be players, though, if they're sort of told they won't be wanted down the track, who would be like, okay, well, who may want to leave now, I think that could be on the cards as well. So, and I don't think the club's going to lie to too many players about where they see them in a year or two, especially if they're in key positions and on big money. I really don't. We should back the team regardless of the results. Haters are going to hate. No excuses. We move forward and learn from the losses. There were elements of the game against the Dolphins where if we got even share of possession and got the 50-50 calls, we would have been right in the match. 100% agree about that, Timmy. 100%. The way Burton and the team were, and Mahoney with his kicks and stuff early, turning them around, getting our line speed up there, forcing some errors out of the fullbacks and wingers. The game plan was fine. There was just too many kinks in our armour. We'd been up a long time and we just weren't able to maintain enough possession or get any 50-50 calls. Let's get that clear as well. There was none for us in that game. No. Going through it again. Every call we got, we should have got. Every call we didn't get, we could have got. 2 forward passes for them for tries as well, denying ours, which wasn't forward in my opinion, in 99% of people's opinions that have seen it. But these things happen, and they've happened to other teams against us as well. We need to call that out as well. And it's hard for Dogs fans to do that. Reed's an excellent player, but yes, it does look like he's on the outer. Just very subtle things I've seen, plus that rumour in the off-season that he was going to Cowboys. He's helped plenty enough anyway. Look, my belief and I won't tell you if I know this or if I'm just believing it, keep it like that, is that, look, how do I say it? I believe Reed has been told he could go at the end of his, end of 2026. We've got a plan, and he'll be worth more money than that. Just like the Penrith system basically told Critter he could go, that said to kick out, we're not going to make you an offer. You're worth more than that. That night he calls the Bulldogs. The next night he has his Chinese meal or whatever, gets that photo taken, and gets released. Media was so pissed off they didn't get to speculate about his destination for 6 months. All done and dusted. The only player we've really won a signing for was Leo Thompson. And this would go down as the second player where there's been a fight with another club for their services. Everybody else has just been signed by the Bulldogs, including Critter, including Reed, including Kikau, including Burton was a win. He was the only other win. They wanted to keep him there. Knew they couldn't. Were offering too much. He had a meeting with the Laundies and whatever else. They actually went after Charlie Staines as well, but he didn't sign. Yeah. I think his manager shopped him around. I don't think the Bulldogs shopped him around at all. And I think that's where it come from. Just like I don't believe the Bulldogs had talked to Toby Sexton about signing a 2-year extension. His manager went to Peter Bedell and said all this, and basically told the club, Toby's happy to stay for $500,000 a year for the next 2 years, in spite of other offers from other clubs. And I think the coach is like, yeah, cool. Gus is like, cool. Do you need a reference? Once a Bulldog, always a Bulldog, says Timmy. David Swartz, welcome, David. I'm concerned for possible disruption with the current team, with the culture of a club, team, then individual culture. Whatever you think of Galvin, he must not simply be helicoptered into first grade. David, look, throughout, and I'm not trying to condescend or anything. I don't know how old people are that I'm talking to. I don't know if you're 50 or 14, right? Or 100 or 20. I don't know. I don't mean to sound condescending. It's just I'm just a fan with an opinion like everyone else. Sometimes I find things out. And most of the time, though, it's through wisdom of seeing how often 2 and 2 makes 4. I went and did the stats. Until this Galvin thing, speculation from Fox Sports about a player would land with Canterbury on potential signings has been 0%. Right? So I know that unless Danny Wheeler or Chamis has anything to say about it, you don't believe it until anything that they say. Right? So when we say he must not simply be helicoptered into first grade, if they think he's going to add value to us at some point, they will do it. They know more than us. They're the ones that have got us to the position that we're in. If it all falls apart, they wear it, I guess. My point is that we as fans have these beliefs and we feel strongly about them. And if you ask me, did I want Lachlan Galvin to come to the club? I probably would have said, probably not. But at the same time, I wanted Mick Potter and I wanted Avarillo to stay, and I didn't want Critter to come in 2022 when it was basically being talked about. My mind changed, and I learned that it's best for me just to take what comes and support the club on its merry way. If they make those choices and it works out, we feel good if we come out and say, oh, you hear so many people make statements and they go, oh, this player should play in this position. And when they don't play there, they think that's a reason we lost. I've been watching fans, obsessing over a reserve grade as well. We've struggled for years. Oh, we've got to bring Renoff, Tony into the team. We've got to bring off a Iggy Ogden into the side. Oh, why aren't we bringing, Liam Knight into the team? He's playing well. We need a big man. If they get picked, they get picked. They believe they're the future. They believe this is going to help the player and help our club in the long term. I said a lot about Carla Lawapu. I could see in reserve grade games how they were just trying to help him manufacture his half game and his control game. I'm pretty sure Laundy paid that $500,000. I might be wrong. I know he was mentoring him out for stuff outside of footy and that sort of stuff. There was all this stuff around him, and it took 7 or 8 weeks, and he was playing first grade. And it was sort of laid on a platter for him. Then he made his first tackle on Hudson Young when he come on in Magic Round, and I could hear the crunch from the stand. And I'm like, wow. Then I'm watching a thing on Willie Mason talking about how hard he tackles. These guys, they get to know these players. And look, I don't really listen to a lot of the elite players who comment about rugby league and coaching. They know a lot more than me, 100%. Couldn't do 1% of what they could do, not even 1,000%. But from what I've found from elite players like Joey Johns and that, their mindset, and someone said this to me the other day, and I'm 100% sense. Their mindset is thinking like an elite player, not like an average NRL player. And whereas I look at Gus Gould, who was quite talented, but he played his roles, he was a role player within clubs. And a lot of the best coaches weren't the best players, but they understand how to get the best out of the average player. And when they sum things up and talk about stuff, they're much more believable and understandable than when you listen to some of the best players in the game talk about rugby league. I find the average types, which have a lot more. Yeah, and look at Cameron Serrato, big, tall, suffered a lot of injuries, was all right, pretty handy, pretty mobile, play centre and edge. But getting back to your comment, David, if they believe that, there's the club, no one deserves their spot. In a way, you can earn your spot. But until they think you're ready and you're the one that should be in that role, they're going to make the decision that's best for the club. It doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter paying your dues and all that. The game's not the same as it used to be. Brad Fittler didn't pay his dues. I don't think Olawapu did either. Olawapu had a really bad injury. They thought his progression was going to be really good, and it probably would have been without that injury, right? Critter come in as pretty much a young guy, straight in. There's players that they believe have got it at the next level, and if it's going to help us in the long term for him to be there now, they're going to make that decision. They're not going to worry about, and talking about culture, I was talking about this earlier. If people in your culture drop their lollies and carry on because the players come into the club, whilst I understand it's human and it's normal, they're not right for your club and not right for what we're building. We've built this on the players that have come, like the Jacob Prestons, the Harry Hayeses, the Barley Haywoods, who have been promised nothing, right? They've obviously been told if you stick at it, you're going to make it and all this sort of shit. They're motivated, but they're promised nothing. They accept the challenge and they become ready for NRL football and they get selected. And that is how it works. And if they were to sit there, all these, Andrew Davey didn't get picked. He mouthed off on the way out. Jackson Torpenay, everyone was saying, he's pulling the badge off his heart, and everyone's saying he's the next man up. Preston comes in and goes straight past him in one preseason. Max King come in, someone who hadn't run for 500 days. In no one's calculations, playing on the bench. Oh, who's Max King? Comes off the bench in a trial, looked like one of our best players there, offloading and been first grade ever since. And they build trust with the club where they're like, here's an upgrade. They've upgraded him twice. They've upgraded Carraz twice. Not because these managers like, you need to upgrade us. The club's tapping him on the shoulder. We're upgrading you. We want you to stay. I just trust the club to do what they've got to do. And also trust them enough to know that there's humans making decisions and some humans get things wrong. And if they get things wrong, we ride the good and the bad. And it's up to them to make the decisions. And I'm not going to sit there and go, I told you so to the club. Oh, I told you so. Told you. I felt that Jonathan Sewer and Jack Underhill would have been really good for them to play in that Dolphins match. I really believe that. But they didn't. So what? If Reed goes, who plays 9? Bailey Hayward, brother. G'day, Scary 79. With what I saw of the game, that hit on Sexton was send off. If not 10 in the bin for any player, if they are, as long as you're not playing for the Bulldogs, it's a play on like it was on Thursday. Look, I actually think he was going to give him 10 in the bin when he saw it. Reed goes in to do his thing, which I think most players in most clubs would have done the same thing as what Reed did with that scenario. But it looked more spectacular when I watched it again. It was hit as he was kicking the ball. He was hit underneath the ribs. There was a wrapping action. He completed through with a tackle. The issue was for me, the legs kicked out and went up because they go over the horizontal. I think it's definitely a penalty. When they're going back and they're saying, "Oh, I actually saw nothing wrong with it," and he wasn't in a dangerous position. What bullshit! He was put into a dangerous position. If he rolls a little bit more, he lands on his head, and it was done at force and without real control. He didn't control him on the way down. He just hit him and landed where he did. So from that point of view, he's got $1,000 fine. I think that's fair enough. I don't think he should have missed a week for it unless he'd had other offences based on their system. Yeah, so, I don't think that it was a send-off or a sin bin. But I can agree on the point that if it was Jared Sutton, he would have sin bin one of our players. And he actually would have went up like that. But Red, who didn't do anything for us and we didn't get any 50-50s, did say, I'm pretty sure he made mention that this might be a sin bin. Have a look at it. He must pay his dues in reserves and play with Cassius, O'Neill and Woods if indeed he wants to develop. Otherwise, it's bullshit if he gets shitty. Yeah, look, I don't think he'll get shitty. If he wants to develop, you're right, but that statement, you're right, David. If he wants to develop, he'll do whatever the club says he's got to do. But what the club says he's going to do is yet to be known until they do it. So that's my point, mate. And I think we just got to wait and see and accept with whatever happens. I don't think there's any, I don't think he's going to get a golden table to sit at and be some messiah that does what he wants. Howard at 9, I could see that working. Galvin is a 5'8" currently and he's no game manager, so I wonder where he could play. Certainly not half at this point, and in fact, nowhere in first grade at this point. Not sure, David. whatever they choose, brother. I think if you're watching our games carefully, ever since 2012, we haven't had a dominant 7. We had Chris Keating. We then got Trent Hodgkinson, who had a great series, and we won with him and Reynolds. The regular season, there was talk of trying to sack Des and the board, all the complaints on Tony Williams. We made the grand final from 7th spot or something. We were playing, our halfbacks was James Graham and Sam Cassiano half the time. They tried Moses Mbai. They tried Reynolds. They tried Lachlan Lewis, Jack Cogger. They tried a heap. Kieran Foran's probably the closest to a 7 that we've had. And his body wasn't right the whole time. Toby Sexton, probably closest to a 7 that we've had as well. But still, it's a role. It's a role where you see Hayward will touch the ball more than Sexton, and people will think that Hayward was actually the halfback when he was still playing lock. There's this thing where they interchange. I say it all the time. If Reed Mahoney's not a dummy half, he'll just move into that lock role, or he'll move into that second receiver role if it has to be. We saw against the Broncos, he put the kick over for Carraz. It was Reed Mahoney. Reed did that. We saw Blake Taff come in at fullback and kick for an edge off a dime for Connor Tracy. All of a sudden, everyone's like, get rid of Hutchison, put Blake Taff at halfback. Hutchison was a 7 for Australian schoolboys. The role of the Canterbury halfback is a role at the moment. It's not a dominant 7 role. I think that's definitely what they want in the long run, 100%. But I haven't seen it. I've seen elements of it. I've seen some, Toby Sexton, where he takes that ball to line for Max King to score the try against the Raiders in that second half. Great halfback play. Took it on. Lachlan Galvin can do that. But as far as control, Galvin is more likely to take a risk, which is a 6, which is why he's considered a 6. Take more risks. That's why Maloney was a 6. But if you wanted Maloney to steer a team around, he could. Nicho Hines, people say he's not a 7. He's trying to be. He's done all right, really, for someone who went from fullback to playing 7. Nico's just a good footballer. And when you've got good footballers in your team that can run the football, that can kick a footy, that can make a tackle, that can play a role in your side. Now, does it take you to a grand final? Maybe it takes them doing that for quite a while for that to happen. But I'm not going to rule him out playing 7. The media can say what they want. Like Braith knows what a 6 is because he was a really good one. And he's got a really good idea of what a genuine 7 is. My point is there's just not enough genuine 7s in the comp at the moment that are at the level that wins your premierships. There's just not enough. There's Reynolds, DCE. I don't think Ben Hunt is that level as a 7. In a good side, yes. But we saw how they made the finals once in 8 years and had some pretty good rosters with him at 7. We just got to let the club do what it does. And, if there's any player in our system who has a tantrum because they're not liking what's happening, that's for the club to manage. But we've seen that, and those players aren't in our club anymore. And some of them are just good people. They're just worried about their future and career and probably believe that they have earned the right. They have deserved it. But the culture is club first, team second, individual third. Remember Wayne Better move Wally Lewis on. It's the mantra for the Bulldogs, club first, team second, individual third. I'm very, very concerned that Guts has fallen in love with the new shiny thing and he's turning us into eastern suburbs Raiders and has put this season in jeopardy. No, Gus looks 4 years ahead, and Gus has seen this player come on the market that he thinks he's a one-in-a-generation teenage player. And he's like, I'm not going to let that opportunity slip, and I'm taking that on board. And the kid wants to play for us. Let's go. He believed Jerome Luai was that. He believed Nathan Cleary was that. He had the same belief in Dylan Edwards. He has the same belief in Stephen Crichton. We should trust. He wrote off a player that ended up being one of his favourites in Matt Singh. He said, who's this kid? He's hopeless when he first saw him. Ended up being one of his favourite players of all time. They're going to get something wrong, mate. And that's fine. Gus doesn't fall in love with the shiny things. I believe he loves Mitchell Woods. I believe he loves Cassius Teo. I believe he loves Toby Sexton. I believe he has genuine care for all these players in our club equally. You ask him who his favourite is, he'll just tell you it's Viliami Kikau. And who wouldn't love big Viliami? I'm sure that if it puts our season in jeopardy, that's a hit that they're willing to take. Because if it puts out, if our players react in a way where they don't take the challenge on, you know, it means our culture was wrong to begin with. That's how I see it. So if they embrace it, he becomes part of their group that they love, and they want him to do, you know, to be that bulldog and to live by that mantra. If they're going to keep doing that, he's going to do that. And anyone who doesn't do that, and even people who are doing that, are still going to not get a jersey next year, some of them. But I'm sure the vast majority will get an upgraded contract somewhere else, whether it be in England, whether it be for another club, when clubs see how valuable some of these players are to our system. Why do you think there's just been more and more of our players actually find roles within other teams? When it was Gus first got there, the majority of those players that were let go have just gone into the wilderness. G'day, Mariana Chittick. I saw the news. I'm unbelieved. They made the right decision because Toby Sexton has enough of losing in the rain. That's funny. I think he should play in round 22 like 100%. Yes, I love the background drama. I don't believe that, David. I feel that they will keep the team as close to the same team that ran out before Origin. Galvin will play cup and maybe get a bench spot if there's any injuries. Look, I think that's how it's going to go as well. I'm just saying, if they don't, that's up to them. You know, as I said, a lot of us didn't trust a lot of the decisions that were made previously. I know it feels like there's a lot more to lose. We're 20 points on top of the ladder. There's a chance we could win the comp. Everyone's fired up, you know, and imagine all the crap that we're going to cost. Oh, you went off too early. You're dancing in the streets in round 2. They all hate us. Let them. Our club knows what it's doing. And if it knows it wants to be a dominant player for a long time, it knows that it wants to be the biggest club in this country. And that's what it's set its sights for, and that's its goals, and it's going to get there. And if that means they've got to go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, then 2 more steps back to get there, they'll do it. I get to watch you live and watch the footy. Let's go. I couldn't believe we lost against the Dolphins like we did. Toby Sexton has been playing really well, and over the next couple of years, he'll get even better and have more NRL experience. Yeah, I agree with that as well, mate. Yeah, the Dolphins, I was confident we could play all right, but I knew it was going to be one of our hardest games of the season, and I said that. And it turned out that way. We could not execute for long enough to get on the possession role we needed. Lost possession, lost the game. It blew out. Made coach really unhappy. made the boys really unhappy, and really brought them back down to earth. And that's maybe what needed to happen. I do think Sexton is getting better every week, but I'm maybe not as quick as the club would like. How long till we are back at full strength? So they've said round 16 for Karaz coming back. And I think round 20 for Salmon. Yeah, I think Karaz won't be back until 17, 18, but we will see. I was thinking maybe the Penrith game, which I think, I'm not sure if we'll have our origin stars or not. But yeah, there's a lot to look at. Close to full. Yeah, I think we'll be very close to full strength come round when Karaz is back. Because everyone but Salmon and probably Jack Todd will be back by then. Touch wood, we don't lose any injuries to Origin or any games leading up to there. We have our bye. We play the Eels and Souths, and I think we have another bye again. And then I think we play Panthers and the Broncos. Panthers at CommBank Stadium will be a good game to go see. And it's either one of those two games we play without Origin stars as well. And look, New South Wales get blown away. Maybe we don't see Critter and King back in the side. Queensland lose. Maybe they give Kurt Mann a run next time and drop somebody. Because it is being played at Suncorp. So, yeah. But guys, we've had a good chat about this. We've talked about a lot of things. Once again, congratulations to Josh Papali. Well done to Jake Averillo. Was put under a lot of pressure against the Bulldogs and did a good job. Did a very, very good job. Toby, Hayward, Mahoney. I could go through the stats of the Dolphins game. We had 45% possession, missed about 37 tackles. The best players in our team were Josh Curran, who made 60 tackles, 100 metres. Harry Hayes worked his ass off. Luke Smith worked his ass off while on the field. Matty Burton, I thought, was our best with the ball, especially. Kickout tried hard. And some of his contact on Finafuiaki was massive, the clashes that they had. That was a really good battle. Yeah, and Connor Tracy tried hard in that weather, catching balls tough. Montoya was okay, but although the commentary team said he gave too much space, that whole edge was just a little bit behind the 8 ball. Hughes was a little bit slow to they really tried to catch up to it, but it was already gone. And that first try they got on the edge was the back line pretty much stop and check their run, which is why they were able to score in the corner. Some of the other stuff through fatigue and whatever else. Paul Curtis Moran had a couple of moments where it happened the week before as well, where he sort of got tangled up in the play of the ball and then trying to get back, missed his assignment. Bit of unlucky stuff there. He was good with the ball in many parts. He then ended up coughing it up, which is always an issue with a smaller body in that situation, running hard. Thought Lipper Hopboy was really good. Yeah. Harry Hayes, not too bad. They did their best. They did their best, guys. Timmy says, I think Kurt Mann's important even if he doesn't play during Origin Series. Give the players a rest after Game 3. And Curtis Moran did try hard. He always tries hard, mate. But I think that's it, guys. I'm running out of breath. I've said all my bits. I could have given you some teams, predicted lineups, but I might wait a little bit. I'll come on likely on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, and we'll talk about State of Origin. We might do a trivia quiz or something. Bulldogs in State of Origin. Might have a couple of people on to do that as well. and see what the news has got in store for us regarding how Galvin's going to fit into our squad leading into that Parramatta match. Will he be playing Cup? Will he be playing first grade? The fact that they've kept him pretty much in first grade of the West Tigers has been interesting as well. He only got dropped for one match, and he's played all right. When their team does all the stuff it's supposed to do, they look good. When they don't look good. He nearly scored that match winner the other day. I don't think he deliberately dropped the bloody ball, to be honest, which some people made out. But anyway, guys, we'll never know some of these things. Thanks for everyone who's joined and said hello. It was good to talk to you all. I'm going to get moving and look forward to having a chat again soon and hearing your thoughts. Thanks for all your opinions and the ability for me to digest that and have a chat about it. Have a great night all. Up the Mighty Bulldogs, says Scary79, and I'll see you all soon. Go the Dogs.